Hey, what is going on YouTube? It's AJ here, otherwise known as Bloodstone the Demon. You've probably seen a lot of my content if you're watching at this point. So, as you probably know, I am a huge My Hero Academia fan, but how much do I like each character? Well, that's what we're going to be doing today, because I've got a tier list of all sorts of characters from MHA, some memorable, some a little bit less so, but I believe this list is going in alphabetical order, but it's going to be interesting to see what you guys think in the comments. Please be gentle. This is the first time I've done audio recording on YouTube, so I'm a little bit nervous as it is. So the tiers are Ultra God, so I will be honest, there's only 10 characters that fit this tier. God tier, which they're pretty good. I'm going to rename this tier because this was a pre-made format. We're going to call this the Good tier. Meh means I just don't have any strong feelings towards or against them. Why are you even here? That's just kind of like, I don't really like the character, either through minor nitpicks or just something else that I just don't really have any enjoyment of their presence on screen. Irritating or underwhelming, it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I need to explain that one. And there are very few characters that fall into this tier, but there are a few that I will have to explain because I've got some controversial opinions on this. Alrighty. So, without any further ado, because we got like 90, 100 something characters, let's get started. So, first off, we got the villain, All for One. And I gotta say, really well written villain. I love his motivation. I love his design. It kind of reminds me of Darth Vader, but it's got like such a cool difference between him and Darth Vader is that you can actually see like there's sort of like residing flesh underneath that you can see that you don't typically tend to get with like Darth Vader. Plus, he wears a suit instead of like a cape and whatever that robot thing Darth Vader has. Also, I've like read a little bit of the manga, but not a whole bunch. But in the manga, he is double as cool as he is in the anime. Alrighty, next up we got the counterpart to All Might, or All for One. We got All Might, and I'm gonna put these two pretty much on par. All Might's like kind of the Superman to All for One, sort of Lex Luthor's General Zod type situation. All Might, I don't necessarily view him as Ultra God tier just because I find him, while I do like everything about his character, there's just one minor little detail I don't like, and that's the whole thing of eat this, his DNA thing. That really bugged me because that sounded a bit off. I'm not gonna lie, and in dub it sounds even more suspicious. Next up we have Best Genist. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really have many strong opinions about this character. He's just kind of there for me. I've made him a villain in some stories, I've made him a hero in others. He's just sort of there for me. Like, he does that whole training thing with Bakugo, which, as you'll come to find, is not necessarily something I really care about. Uh, but he doesn't really have too many major plot points aside from that. Like, the one thing that he's done that I think was kind of cool was when he was one of the few people that managed to keep All for One kind of constricted and keep him sort of at bay. But other than that, he's not really done too much memorable stuff, as far as I can remember. Bubble Girl, she kind of just became irrelevant. Like, she was in the 2 episodes and didn't really do much. She was in the first episode that introduced Night Eye, and then she was like a brief cameo where Zuko was rejected from joining the Night Eye agency after, spoiler alert, Night Eye's death. But it's just a thing of she doesn't really do much else. Like almost every character has done at least a few things. Bubble Girl doesn't even fight. Like, I have not seen her in action at all. Cammy, I'm gonna put Cammy in good. I wish that we got to see more of the Shiketsu characters. Unfortunately, we just don't seem to have too many opportunities. Like, we've only seen them in the provisional license exam, and we saw them in that whole spiel where Bakugo and Shoto had to do a makeup for their provisional license exam. Aside from that, you don't really see too much of Cammy literally anywhere else. And if she's in the manga right now, I wouldn't know. I have not. While I do follow the manga, I have not been following the most current season. So please do not spoil that for me if you are mad that I put her this low down. But seriously, I think it would be cool if we had a little bit more like interactions of her because I think she's got such an interesting personality of being the sort of stereotypical teenage girl that you see in a lot of traditional media. But yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. Cementos. I will be honest, he's not god tier, but he is a a very solid character. That wasn't even pun intended. He's just he's another character that doesn't really get given a lot of screen time, but when he does, he kind of kicks ass. Like the few times that we have seen him, there was the time where he basically stopped All Might's secret from being revealed, as well as Izuku's, and he also was, although it pisses me off a little bit, which is why he's not up here right now. He did beat Eijiro and Sato pretty easily, and that was pretty memorable. Like he was not even having much of a sweat in that fight. Centipeder, much the same as Bubble Girl, he was just kind of there for a few episodes and then didn't really do much in those episodes he was in. Like if I remember rightly, the only thing about this character that he's done is I believe he fought some of the grunts in the whole Shiha Saikai arc, which, spoiler alert, one of my favorite arcs of all time. But other than that, he just doesn't really have too much of a presence in the series. I've done some stuff with him as a character, but not a whole bunch. Like he was one of the trial leaders for whenever I did that whole Black Panther segment of my MH Avengers series. But other than that, I didn't really have a personality to go off of, so it was more just I only use him in certain instances. Recovery Girl, I'm gonna put in God tier just because of how this lady right here is the reason that Izuku is still alive. Like he would not be standing if she did not exist. With the amount of pain he put himself through and all the stuff that he was doing in the first season where he was just kind of being reckless. Without her, I don't think we'd have an MHA season 2. Yeah, I think she just has to be up here just for the fact that she's the reason that Deku still gets to live. Yeah. Next up we have Dobby, and honestly, Dobby. Also, I'm not. Can you? My computer's giving me trouble. I give up. Anyway, so Dobby is a solid choice for like the god tier category. The reason I like Dobby is because his motivation is very interesting. He just wants to surpass Endeavour, and I don't know the whole reason behind it. We haven't really got too much, and from the last manga segment I saw, they did kind of touch on why he hates Endeavour, mainly him being Endeavor's son and all that. But at the same time, I think that he kind of falls into a bit of. Hey, there's like a weird thing that they do with the League of Villains, where they have like they'll have twice, they'll have Toga and Shigaraki sort of be like the main ones, and sometimes even Kurogiri. But like he kind of just fades into the back at times until you get to like another main arc. Like you'll see the League of Villains pop up a lot, but like until it gets to like a main arc segment, he doesn't really do much. Because like you see, whenever they're talking about the whole training thing, he kind of runs away from fighting whenever Gigantomachia becomes something they have to try and tame. But he just kind of sits back and relaxes on that one. Then until the whole arc with the what are they called? The Metal Liberation Army. That's the group. When he starts to actually start picking up pace again. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I have no clue who this guy is. So I'm gonna add a row below that is who? How did I write that backwards? Because I'm not gonna lie, I don't know who this is. He looks familiar, but what he's actually good for, I don't really know. I can't really make a judgment call on that one. Alright, next we have one of the whole Shiha Saikai group. I think this one is Natomo? Is this Natomo? Hold on, I have to check this. Is it Natomo? I honestly don't know at this point. If I remember rightly, this one had the quirk that let him, basically whenever he got drunk, he could let other people get drunk, which I've done some funny stuff with that in my Villain Rehab series, which I thought was pretty cool. But other than that, I don't really use him too often. He's like I wouldn't say he's like a great character. He's just sort of one that just exists. Alright, next we start to get into the Class 1A at last, and we start off with Denki Kaminari. So, although I've made Kaminari a bad guy in a lot of series, like, I've done the count on it a lot, on how many times I've made characters villains. Denki, Ojiro, and Sato are kind of the three most prominent villain ones in the series that I do. I don't know why I keep doing it, it just works with how his personality sort of could have shifted in one direction or another. But he's not a bad character in the actual show. Like, he is really cool, his power is cool. Again, he just has the drawback of having that one little irritation of dumb mode, yay thing. Like, I know it's meant to be funny, but I just kind of find it to be dumb at times because of how inconsistent it is. Because, like, sometimes it'll take very little power to make him go dumb mode, and then other times he can do like 7 or 8 different massive blasts without going dumb mode in like the movies. His power level is very inconsistent, and that just kind of bugs me on that. Next up, we have Ectoplasm. Again, another character that is a hero that we have seen a few times, and he's been in like the same situations as Cementos, I believe. The main things he was notable for was his fight against Asui and Tokoyami, and his whole fight with all the other pro heroes in the USJ. But aside from that, I don't think we saw him much after that, except like brief little cameos and teaching scenes. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he's done much else since then. I might have to rewatch the whole series just to try and remember, but I don't believe he has. So he's not a bad character, and I like his quirk. It's pretty unique. It does have a differentiation from Twice, which I like, but it's just a thing of I did not really see much of him after like the first 2 seasons. Next, we have Edgeshot, which, unlike the other pro heroes, he's actually been in a few more seasons. Like he's only been in like maybe 1 or 2 more episodes than these two have. He's still done a lot more than them in the fact that he also was a bit of a pain in All for One's ass, just because he would not let up on All for One, and All for One was having a bit of struggle between him and Best Jeanist. And then All Might just kind of came in and saved the day. But Best Jeanist has a pretty interesting quirk, and I actually really like it. Like the fact that he can just make himself turn into like a string thread. I love that quirk. That is so cool. Uh, as for like any notable things that he's done in this series, he had that whole segment with I don't remember who he fought in that whole training arc because there was the 2v1s, and I think he fought. I don't think he fought in that. I think his main thing was like the training camp arc where he saved a bunch of people there, and then the whole saving Bakugo rescue operation there as well. So while he may have been in like maybe 1 or 2 more than these, I just find that he's a little bit cooler design for me, as well as the fact that he's been in a little bit more than them. I mean, at this point, do I even have to explain this one? Favorite character in the whole series. His motivation is cool. I love his design. His power is awesome. The only thing that irritates me about him is it's not even anything that irritates me about him. It's the fact that up until now, he's been treated like Bakugo's side piece until season 4. He got a cool segment in season 4, which was absolutely amazing. One of the best character developments for a non-main character like Bakugo or Deku or Uraraka. But he is just so cool, and I love the red spiky hair. I think it's so cool. Next up, we have Endeavour. Um, so I am very mixed on this character, just on the sheer fact like he has become a good guy, like a better person than he was before over time, but definitely not a great person, and he still hasn't exactly made a whole amends. He's just kind of trying to, which I respect it, but at the same time, that's still a bridge you have to cross, and I'm still not a fan of him. Like I wouldn't say I'm hating him, but I don't exactly love him either. I wouldn't. I kind of keep him here just because there's nothing else I really think fits him. Eri, I mean, come on. Season 4 might be my favorite season just because of the whole overhaul arc, because it introduced some of the best character like arcs as well as some of the best characters. Eri is one of my favorite of the sort of Deku children like that idolize him. She is by far the most she's by far the probably the most empathetic one you can be to, just because of the fact that she didn't ask for what she was given, and then even after that, she was made to feel like crap for even further. Whereas the other ones, their motivations and why they like Deku are very limited. There's only one that kind of even comes close to her, and that's Coda, but I'll show you what I think about him whenever he comes up. Next up, we got Fat Gum, the man who trained my boy Kirishima. I know he hasn't been in half as much as the rest of these pro heroes probably have, but I got some extreme bias for season 4, and Fat Gum is no exception. His whole demeanor is just absolutely amazing. I love his whole quirk and how he can basically just go from fat to skinny in 2 seconds, even if I do find it that a bit jealous. I get a bit jealous of that. Still just, he trained my boy Kirishima, what more can I say? Tokoyami. Tokoyami's actually another one that I kind of make a villain in a lot of series. I find that having him like as a good guy can be fun, but I find that having him as a villain is even more fun because it's just his whole demeanor screams villain, but when he's not a villain, it's funny because he looks like he should be a villain. If I was to guess who I thought the UA trader was, whenever there was like the whole string of things going online about who the trader was, my guess was on this guy or Hagakure. I'm not going to spoil who was revealed to be the trader because I had that spoiled for me and I know how that feels. But I thought it was going to be Tokoyami for the longest time, just because of that whole revelry and darkness bit. And I find that he's such an edgy character, and I think it would be like the unsurprising surprise, if you know what I mean. But yeah, for the longest time, I thought he would have been the traitor, or maybe Hagakure. But either way, he's still pretty cool. Gang Orca, kind of the same thing as Ectoplasm and Cementos. He's got cool powers, not really that prominent of a character. Not bad though. Gran Torino. I love Gran Torino. Like I wouldn't say he's my favorite like character here, but I think he is one of the coolest and most hilarious characters, just for the fact that he beat the shit of Deku for no apparent reason other than to get him into shape and to train him in the way he thought was necessary. Kind of similar to how All Might was. And just seeing All Might be terrified of this old man and having Deku underestimate him whenever he walks in just to have his ass kicked by this old man. I find that so funny. Okay, now this is an interesting one because Sero is very different between movie and series. In the series, he basically does nothing. His only notable wins were uh his notable win was against the 1B battle whenever he was working with Bakugo, Jiro, and Sato. But he doesn't really do much in the series aside from that. Like he lost his side of the fight against Midnight. Mineta of all people had to save him in that regard. Like he doesn't do much in the series. Now, whenever it gets to be part of the movies, this guy carries. He saves so many lives, especially in Heroes Rising, I believe. This man saved so many people from 9. He was like Spider-Man, just saving people, swinging around, coming in and just rescuing them from instant death. The man is a legend in the movies, but really just doesn't have much of a presence in the TV, like the anime. So I'm gonna put him at a good tier. Corono, honestly, another one where it's just I love season 4, so he's pretty much immediately put up into at least A tier. He's just got a cool quirk. His loyalty to Overhaul is actually kind of interesting. I find that the only thing that kind of draws back from him is that he was only there for a season. Like I wish the whole Overhaul saga could have lasted a little bit longer. Like maybe have some of the characters return and join the League of Villains or something. But at the end of the day, I'll take what we got because it was a really well written series, and I loved how it kind of ended off. Even if I would like to see some of the characters make a return, I'm not sure if they did in the manga segments that I have seen. I think they might return, like some of them, but not all of them. Then we have, I think this is, who is this guy? He's one of the Overhaul grunts, but I cannot remember this guy's name. He's one of the Shihisaikai. Hold up, I'm going to figure out who this guy is. Alright, so I just figured out who this guy is. So his name was Tengai. Now, the main thing about him is that he has that whole shield quirk, which is pretty cool. And I liked how he was a really good pair with Rappa, I think his name is. Because one of them was just defending while the other one was on offense, making a lethal combo. It was only until Fat Gun basically got inside of Rappa's head that their plan fell apart. But it was really cool to see how their dynamic worked of just one goes on immediate defense, one on offense, and I think that was a pretty good thing. As for motivation, we don't get to see too much of his motivation. That arc kind of came to mostly Rappa, but he's definitely still a cool character. Alright, we have Toga. So Toga is one of, I think, one of the top 5 ships for Deku, which I personally agree with. If I had to pick who I'd want the actual ship to be with, I would say either Toga or Jiro. Jiro, I just find to be a much better written character than Uraraka is, and I find her whole personality is just a lot more interesting. And Toga, it would be kind of like a Romeo and Juliet situation, which I really like because they're both on opposite sides. Toga clearly has feelings for Deku. I think if Deku had like developed feelings for Toga, it would have been a really cool dynamic. But alas, we're stuck with Uraraka. Now, I love Toga, but she is crazy. I will give her that. She is nuts. So while I like Toga as a character, I would never want to meet this person in real life. I feel like most of 1B just kind of gets overshadowed into either one of 2 arcs, unless you're like the main 3, which is like Tetsu, Monoma, and Kendo. And Ibarra really doesn't change from that trope. Like, her one notable win in anything was against Kaminari twice, where she literally captured him in the same attack twice in 2 different battles, which isn't really very impressive. It's just kind of like showing that Denki doesn't have the strength to beat her work. So I'm not going to say that I like her character that much, but I wouldn't say it's a terrible one either. Uh, Another Shiketsu character. I'm gonna be honest, I did not like Inasa. I found him very annoying with how he was very like preachy towards Shoto, just because Shoto was Endeavor's son and Endeavor's kind of seen as the main bolt in the hero society. Which I get that's a cool dynamic to do, but it just from someone he's never even met, I find that to be very preachy, and I find that's just kind of it didn't make much sense because Shoto already didn't like his dad, and I just found that this character was kind of dull and then kind of came off a bit arrogant at times. I feel so bad that I keep killing off Inko in almost every story I've done. I think it's less than 50% of the stories I've done she's lived in. I think, yeah, because there's so many ones where I've killed her off where she just hasn't existed in them. So it's definitely not in her favor. But it's not because I dislike her as a character, it just makes for a better, more well written narrative if she's either dead or abusive, then dead, or just abusive. There's so many things you can do with Inko's character because you can twist it any way you want, but like in the actual anime, her character is definitely a very kind and loving character. You see that she is worried for Deku at every turn in the series. I just, it's absolutely amazing. She's not a bad mother. I don't know why. I don't know why the fan base, like the community of tech story writers, make her into a villain a lot of the time. I think it's mainly ease and for better story narrative, but it's just a little bit interesting how she's the villain in most every story you see on the internet about MHA, even though she's really not that kind of person in the show. I mean, come on. It's the main character. I couldn't put him any lower than God, Ultra God tier. Even though he was a bit reckless in the first season, which I was a little bit concerned with, because if that stuck through, I wouldn't have liked the series probably half as much as I do now. But he is the main character. There's not really much more I can say. He's so cool. He's got an awesome power that he inherited from the number 1 hero, which immediately gives him props, even if that was a little bit questionable methods. But he's got such a nice rivalry with every character. He's got nice relationships with every character minus one. But he's just a very well written, well balanced character. He's basically always just kind of been the character who's like, I've not been given anything I wanted, and then as soon as he starts getting what he wanted, the one of one of the characters that I don't like starts being it. So you're gonna see that come up relatively soon. Kamui Woods, I don't remember much about you. Like I've seen you, I know who you are, but I don't know much about like what you've done. Because Kamui Woods, he was like he was a very prominent character in like the first season as sort of like kind of felt like exposition in the first and second season, and then there was that comedic bit where he can't use his like signature move ever because other people keep stealing the attack. And honestly, that was funny for a while, but then it just kind of became almost kind of sad because there's nothing really that this character has besides that gimmick now. What have I seen him in? I don't think he's actually had any notable presence in the series since season 1 or 2, to the best of my knowledge. Like he's always just kind of like a background hero character, if I'm not mistaken. Probably the most controversial thing on this list. I despise Bakugo's character. Now, let me explain, because this one's probably the most controversial one on this list. I don't like Bakugo for two main reasons. One, he's a bully, which never been a fan of them anyway. But the second reason is that his bullying comes from an inferiority complex that comes from nowhere. So, for the whole of his life, Bakugo has been above Deku. He's had quirks that are more powerful than Deku, literally having none. He's always had more popular status. He's always been the most adored. He's never really had anything that he's wanted basically taken from him. He's never had any sort of struggle or strife. And he still thinks Deku's looking down on him, which I would get if this was a character that had sort of All Might powers from the beginning. But he doesn't. He had this inferiority complex from the start. So it's not really that well written in my eyes because he's feeling inferior to a character that's just trying to get to an even ground as this character. And it just makes no sense that this guy is making Izuku's life so miserable for so long and still thinks that Eku's trying to be the one that's above him. The whole it's probably one of my least favorite parts of My Hero Academia is just Bakugo's character. It makes very little to no sense to me. And you can give me all sorts of flack in the comments as you want, but I just despise Bakugo's character for most of the series. I'll admit he gets a bit better in later seasons, but until I see like a full cleanup of his act and just losing that inferiority complex even now, because like even now he may have lost his whole bullying Deku thing, but he still has that inferiority complex, and it shows up a lot when he's like when Endeavour like hugs him, he's like and he starts going off about how we beat you to it first and this, that, and the other. It's not even just Deku that he has the inferiority complex to. Like, he has it towards everyone, and it's not even warranted. It's just, I feel like another character has the inferiority complex, but does it way better. Just because of how that other character has an inferiority complex that comes from somewhere. This just comes out of nowhere, and it's just, I don't enjoy it. It is what it is. It's just my opinion on that one. Kendo Rappa. I'm gonna put Kendo up here with Tengai up here, just because I think, like I said, these two are a great lethal combo. I find them to be very interesting. I'd probably put Rappa up here, actually, just because Rappa had that whole backstory of how he couldn't beat Overhaul, and that was the one person he couldn't beat. I found that to be an interesting, unique take on his character. God damn, there are a lot of characters in this series. So next up we have Magna. On it, like I know who this character is, but like, do I even need to? They were in 2 episodes and then dead the next. So it's not really that much worth mentioning with this character. It's just kind of meh. You know what? I'll just put it in hate you just because I do know who they are. It's just they haven't done anything. Coda doesn't really do much. Like he had the whole present mic fight, which I personally feel was the biggest cop out I've ever seen. Jiro gives him a motivational speech, and then suddenly he's suddenly able to lose all his fears. Eh, that was not great. But I can do stuff with this character that I kind of find interesting. But as for like in the actual series, I just don't enjoy his character. All right, next up we have Koda, who is probably the only other Deku child admirer that I think even comes close to meeting Aries' backstory, just because he lost his parents, which that was tragic enough. But the guy that he lost his parents to tried to kill him, then tried to kill the guy that saved Koda, which that is that is a lot to lose from one person. Which I find to be kind of interesting because now he idolizes Deku a lot, and I think he comes back in the newest season of the manga, but I can't be sure. I think it's like a brief cameo, but I couldn't tell you if I'm being honest. But he's got a definitely decent backstory. I just wish we got to see more of him. Plus, whenever he punched Deku in the balls, I'm not gonna lie, that was funny to me. I find physical comedy to be a lot more entertaining. Kurogiri, um, easy S tier. His backstory, his design is menacing, arguably even more menacing than All for One's. Like, if you were to swap these two's design, I would not be fussed. Like, this character looks badass, maybe just a slight bit more badass just because of the purple smoke look instead of the second Vader cosplayer in this entire MHA series. Whereas Kurogiri has that little smoke and ambiguous look that you could basically hide anyone behind that. And they really did hide that very well. Like, I love what they did with Kurogiri's backstory and how he's literally a Nomu made from one of Aizawa's friends. Honestly, one of my favorite villains from the League of Villains. Next up, we have Jiro. So, Jiro. Huh. So, I don't really think I have much to say here. Jiro's just kind of like my favorite, just because I think she's just got like a personal. She's just cool. I have no way of basically justifying this. I just find her cool. Her personality is interesting. I love her music motivations. I love her whole aesthetic, her goth punk vibe. So cool. I don't even know who this is. Mandalay's alright. Not really much to say here. Like the whole, I'm gonna just actually move all the pixie, like the whole pussycat, whatever they're called. Where's the other ones? You got tigers somewhere here. I'm gonna put actually this one at the I hate you because if you lose to Magna and Spinner, two of the arguably weakest characters in this series, you do not deserve to be higher than this. Where's the last one? Ah, there he is. Because like I don't mind the Pussycat dolls. I can't remember their names. It's so weird. But these three, I don't mind. They're not bad. They're just kind of meh. This one, you're useless. Like I don't enjoy you at all. You lost to Magna, who is arguably the weakest in my opinion. Ojiro kind of just becomes irrelevant over time. Like the reason I'm able to use him as such a versatile character of being whatever I need him to be for a story is because he's such a blank canvas. There's literally nothing to this character. His only real interaction with any main character is when he basically warns Deku about Shinso, and then that's it. Like his fights, he's 50-50, I believe, as of right now. And then literally because he has the tie with 1B, he had his win against Power Loader and his lost against Shoto, I believe. He's basically on a 50-50 streak and just isn't that cool. Like in the movies, he doesn't do anything. In the TV shows, he doesn't do anything. Just not a very interesting character, which kind of makes it a lot easier to work with him because you can alter anything about this man and it would basically change nothing. He's got no real outgoing personality thing that you have to worry about. There's not really much to say about him. Hatsume's cool. Like, I wouldn't say Hatsume's like one of my favorite characters in the series, but definitely a solid pick. Shoji's another one that kind of gets more praise in the movies than he does in the TV shows. Like, the main thing he did in the TV show was basically save Tokoyami. And aside from that, he hasn't really done too much because he tied against 1B with Ojiro. He lost, I believe. No, he won with Shoto, but that was mainly because Shoto did all the hard work. And then he hasn't really done much since, but like in the movies, he's like a recon expert similar to Jiro. But he doesn't really do much else in that regard. Midnight. Let's just say Midnight's good. Midnight's good. Oh, who are you? I don't remember this one at all from the Shihazaikai. I think this was like the little parakeet thing that was sitting on everyone's little arm at times. Is that? No, that's not Nemoto, is it? I don't think so. Um. Oh, it's Joy Iranika. I don't remember you very well. So that's just gonna have to stay where you're at. Mina's alright. Like, her personality shifts at times. Like, she's cool at times. Other times she comes off a bit sort of like a nosy, kind of puts her nose where it doesn't belong, and I kind of find that irritating at times. So I'm not going to put her in like god tier, but definitely good tier. I don't need to explain this. Like, if you think Mineta belongs anywhere higher than this, I won't judge you out loud, but know that internally there is something that I think about you. Okay, this is going to be interesting, but I don't really find Mirio to be that different from All Might. I think they're. I know that Mirio has a whole different quirk and a whole different motivation than All Might, but like in terms of personality, they're basically both just happy-go-lucky all the time. Which I find that whenever we have one good one, there's gonna be one that's a little bit less. I don't know what it is. Honestly, I wish I could explain this in a way that I'd understand, but it's just I don't find him to be very interesting. His whole Night Eye relationship was cool, but after Night Eye died, that basically went to nothing. So this one's actually a personal thing, but I cannot put Momo any higher just because of the amount of crap that this character has put me through with my channel. For those of you who don't know, Xenoblade Deku was one of the most frustrating series for me in a personal way, just because of a certain repeated comment of the ship, and I was struggling mentally with this one. And then it kind of traveled not just to that series but to every other series. It was spammed in my comments by one person, and I just can't put her any higher than maybe I'll put her good. I can't put her any higher just because of the personal irritation she has caused me with that one person. Sorry, Momo, but that's just the way that the cookie crumbles in this case. Alrighty. Next up, we got Moonfish. Interesting quirk, not much personality, wasn't really in the series for very long. I'm not really gonna put you anywhere. I'm gonna put you. Why are you even here? Because like I've done stuff with his character that I think was interesting, but as for like anything in regards to the series, there's not really much to say about him. Compress easily another great villain for the League of Villains. I love his whole like weird Shadow Man from what's it called, the Princess and the Frog vibes that he gives off at times, and then other times he's just like super menacing. Especially after he got his arm taken off, he had a whole different aura. Like he was pissed. And when he went and took Overhaul's arm, that was even funnier. Just because it was an eye for an eye, and I love it. Nezu, I don't really know what to say about Nezu. Like he's got funny moments, but he's mainly just comic relief at times. Like his quirk was interesting whenever he was fighting Kaminari and Mina, but aside from that, he hasn't really got a major presence in the anime from what I can tell. I've heard that he does a bit more in the manga, but as for like the actual show, he's a bit meh. Miss Joke is like one of the most popular characters for Aizawa to be with, and for good reason. Just because I think she's got such an outgoing personality that would basically contrast with Aizawa's sort of laid back and monotone personality so well. They'd be a perfect like couple if they were to get that way in the series. And I think it works really well. It kind of reminds me similar to Assassination Classroom almost, where it's Miss Ivalovich and I can't remember the other teacher's name, but he was a stickler in the rules like Aizawa, and she was not as outgoing as Miss Joke, but it's a very similar situation. I wish they would do. Alrighty. Next up, we have Mount Lady, kind of similar to Kamui, where she's not a bad character. She just kind of hasn't had a major presence since like the first few seasons. Like she's had definitely more of a presence than Kamui. She's kind of came back in season 5 to preserve his sort of media and show showman sort of side of the Hero Society, just to try and get people to like the Hero Society more. Which I think that's why she's more present, because I don't think otherwise these two would have much of a presence, if at all, for the rest of the series. But she's not bad. And I liked her character that I made in the Infinity War series. Muscular, another really awesome design for the League of Villains. Honestly, I think there's maybe one or two misses in the League of Villains, Magna and Spinner, but other than that, I wouldn't say that any of the League of Villains really falls short for me. I did not mean to do that. Alrighty. And next up we have Mustard. Mustard, okay, I love Mustard's design. I think his whole thing of being an ex-school, like an ex-UA high, trying to get in. I don't know what the word is there. Oh, applicant. Ex-UA high applicant trying to get in. That was unique. But again, he doesn't really. I'm gonna put him meh, just because he hasn't had enough time to really do anything yet. I don't remember this guy at all. Like his design looks weird. I can't tell if that's like his quirk activating or not, but he's just a big hairball. Okay, this is the next controversial one. I find Uraraka to be the most vanilla, plain, basic ship of all time. Like her character started off decent in the first seasons where she was sort of more independent, but over time I've just kind of grown to sort of have a disliking to her character just because it feels like she just becomes sort of Deku's side piece and just doesn't really have much of a interesting quality. She's just using a lot of the training of others to sort of motivate herself. And as much as I'm gonna get hate for this, I just find her to be very boring at times. I don't know what it is about it. It's just something I don't personally enjoy. And here we go. Here's the character that I think did the whole inferiority complex way better than Bakugo because he had a reason. He actually had a legitimate reason to be this way. See, Bakugo, his whole thing is I'm mad at everyone regardless of the fact that everyone is not better than me and I have clearly the superior power. So I'm going to beat down on the guy that is less than me and I'm going to tell him that he's trying to be above me. That makes no sense. Monoma, on the other hand, has had people basically try and one up him at a lot of turns and points, and he feels like he's inferior just because he's in 1B, where when he thinks he should be in 1A, and how everyone else seems to value 1A more than 1B. And he actually has a reason for this inferiority complex because it comes from somewhere. It comes from a stem of just not liking people and how they are treating him and his group. Whereas Bakugo, it doesn't really come from anywhere other than just general untamed hatred. I think he's got an amazing quirk. His character development is a little bit shoddy at times, but I don't really dislike that about him. I think that instability he has actually adds to him a bit more. And I think it's just really unique character. Nejire. Nejire is probably. I think I'm going to put Nejire here. Nejire was super cool in the Shihisaikai arc, and then seeing her as sort of like a almost motherly figure to Eri is kind of adorable in the latest season. But aside from that, the only other thing that she's really been a part of is the whole school festival where she does that whole spectacle light thing, and then nothing else came of her character. Like I think they had a fight in the latest season, but other than Mirio basically falling in the water and nearly drowning again, I don't think that really has any merit. She doesn't really do much in that either. So she's not a bad character, but she doesn't really have much of a presence aside from season 4. Still love her personality though, and her design is really unique. Sir Night-Eye. I love his quirk. Season 4 bias, again, I cannot help it. But also, the high pressure density steel might be one of the coolest weapons I have seen used in the series so far. He took out Rappa. Rappa, of all people, with a single blow. I don't know how much more I can justify how that weapon is single-handedly one of the most overpowered things you could ask for. But if you had someone like Deku just wind up enough of a swing of it and just launch it with one for all full cowling, that's a lethal combo. That's death. And if it can take out Rappa when it's Night-Eye, who is clearly less physically stable than Deku of all people, is still beaten by this guy, that's an issue. This guy is a genuine threat, or he would have been, had it not been for the fact that the writers kind of killed off him way too soon, which I personally find kill off a main character, but why Night Eye? I do love Night Eye though; he's pretty cool. 13, honestly, she doesn't. I don't think she's really done anything besides the training arcs of the students, where she did the whole fight against Aoyama and Uraraka, and then she had the fight against the League of Villains, where Kurogiri, badass as he was, basically just one-shot her with a single portal. So again, kind of irrelevant nowadays, but I'm not gonna put her there. That's not fair. I'll put her in meh. I mean, I don't really know how to rank this guy because he doesn't really have one set appearance. But like, if I was ranking all the gnomes as a whole, I guess I'd put them in like, why are you even here? Just because I think some of them are complete hits. Like the first Noma we see is up in Beast, and then some of the later ones are kind of meh. Uh, I oh, I gotta put Overhaul in the top tier. Even if I don't like him as a person, I've got to admit his character is absolutely brilliant. One of the things that I like about him is that, or like that I like about the show, is that it addresses three different kinds of thought throughout different series and movies. You have the quirk society that wants to sort of come out of the limelight and start to have the ability to use their quirks more often, which you see in like characters like um, Redestro and things like that. Then you have the moderates, which are all these like 1A, 1B, the hero society. And then you have the ones that want to have quirks removed as a whole because they see the true danger of it, even if it may not be a thing of like they're doing the right thing to go about it. His motivation of wanting to remove all quirks because he sees them as a threat and sees them as a threat to, even if it is just to his business, it's a whole ideological thing that I like about the show is that it addresses how quirkless are afraid of the quirks, and that's something that I find Deku relates to both sides for, because he knows how it feels to be quirkless, but he also likes the quirks. But it's just I find it to be such an interesting dynamic of the show, and I think Overhaul is one of the best representations of it. There's another character in like the latest movie that does the same thing, but like he's basically the opposite of Overhaul. He thinks well, actually no, Fleckturn was one of the ones I think would actually side with Overhaul if he had the chance. Um, I don't think this list actually has any of the newest characters just yet. Yeah, I don't think it has anything from Heroes Rising, but if it was, Fleckturn would be a solid god tier. Alrighty. And next up, and also Redestro would probably god tier as well. Power Loader, just I'm gonna put you in underwhelming. Not really done much to really impress me in that regard. Present Mike, I don't think you can really give me a solid. I don't think anyone can really give me a solid argument as to why Present Mike deserves to be above good or below good. Just because he's there and he does have some moments, like especially with the whole Kurogiri plot in one of the latest episodes. I think he's just kind of really he's kind of okay. He's not bad, he's not good. I wouldn't even put him in meh because he does have some notable qualities. It's just I don't really rank him much higher or lower than this. Next up is Sato. I'm gonna put him in hate. I don't like his design. I think it's kind of stupid, his whole lip thing. And quirk-wise, I don't think he has much going for him because he's basically just able to turn donuts into steroids. Uh, Personality-wise, they don't really give him much. He's lost basically every fight up to this point except for the one where Bakugo kind of carried him, and his only real contribution to that was binding down Bondo of all people. If your major victory is binding Bondo down to the ground, that's a problem. Side note, I don't think this tier list also has all of the 1B characters, because I'm noticing a severe lack of Kendo. But if Kendo was in it, she'd be solid god tier. Katsukame. Katsukame was cool, and I cannot say much more than that, because he was really not much else other than a really cool fight. Ryukyu, I'm sorry, but Dragon Lady is cool. Dragon Lady might be one of the coolest quirks that I've seen in the show. Just because she turns her whole body into a literal dragon. You don't see many people doing that in this show. Closest we get is Tokoyami's Dark Shadow, who literally makes a second entity that's shaped like a bird. Not much else. No clue. Shishikura, again, kind of the same situation as Inasa, just a bit preachy, not really a huge fan of him. Selkie, who? Like, I know who he is, I just don't have anything to say about him. Nidamo, one of the least interesting members of the Shihisaikai, in my opinion. He's basically just a truth or a lie detector. Aizawa, oh come on. If you think I'm putting Aizawa anything less than S tier, you are sadly mistaken. He puts so many cool characters in their place. Like, all these strong characters like Bakugo, All Might, Deku, Kirishima, he can put all of them in line just with a single glare. Which I think is so cool. Shoto's good. Actually, I'm going to put Shoto in God tier. I like his backstory. I like his quirk. I love how he's kind of emotionless at times just because of the fact that he's had so much childhood trauma. I think he's a very relatable character at times. Serious, you don't really have much of a presence in the show at all. You're kind of just lumped in there with Selkie. Snipe, again, I kind of have to put him with 13 just because they haven't really done anything of worth. Okay, as much as I may find that the trio that fought Amaziki were kind of weak, this guy is he is an exception just because he was chomping through everything. The only thing he wouldn't chomp through was the diamonds. And I mean, who the hell can eat through diamonds? This man was an absolute beast, just eating everything. And I do like I said, I like how they have the whole arc with like quirks, quirkless, and those that are kind of screwed into society like that. Spinner, you're with Mag. Whoa, why did I get a second Dobby? Okay, Spinner, you kind of made irrelevant at this point. No one knows what your quirk is. You just have a lizard skin and a giant sword made of other swords. Yeah, it's just no, not that interested. Stain, okay, Stain is one of my favorite villains. Probably not more than Kurogiri, but like on an even playing field at least, or like at most. Because Stain, like I say, it's the whole thing that I like about the series as a whole with the whole why we can't handle superpowers because no one's going to be happy in that situation. But Stain, he sees the corruption that's in this hero society that All Might, Aizawa, everyone's part of. And he sees that there are heroes that aren't doing it for the right reasons, which I think is so cool. And he's just a badass character, badass quirk. I love the color scheme. I don't really have much more to say about that. And I think this is going to be the last S tier that I put up here, but I mean, can you blame me at this point? Amajiki, his personality of being the shy, timid guy until it comes to serious, like to straighten up and just get serious, in which he wrecks shit up. Like, he fought 3 people with pretty powerful quirks, I'm not gonna lie, and he beat them all with some insane strategies, swallowing an entire diamond just so he could make diamond skin on his arm just to protect himself, and then using other people as a sort of weapon. He's got some tactics and some intelligence that I really admire about his character. Even if he does have a bit of a shy personality at times, I find that makes his character even more relatable. I don't remember you. Ida's like, Ida's good. The thing I don't like about Ida is the whole thing that he just kind of becomes the laughing stock of everyone's joke at times. That's more not about him and more just about the fact that the show kind of treats him as sort of comic relief of, oh, it's the class teacher's pet, this, that, and the other. But it's just they could do so much more with his character if they just let him. Like, I like what they did at they had that whole arc with him and his brother, which I thought was amazing, and how Stain basically just had to change his whole persona. I think if Stain was to see who Tenya became later on in the series, he would be impressed. Tetsu, I'm not I'm not gonna lie. I like you, Tetsu, but I can't put you any higher than good just because you are a discount version of my favorite character, Kirishima. And I would argue Shigaraki, if it wasn't for the fact that Kurogiri and All for One existed, Shigaraki might be one of my favorites. But it's just the thing of these two look so much cooler than 7, 9, 10 different hands on his body, which I find to be a bit of a weird design choice. Not a bad one, it's just a bit out there. As for like personality, pretty cool. Quirk, pretty awesome. But I wouldn't say he goes above and beyond. Hagakure was another one that I thought was going to be the traitor for a while. I'm going to put her in like good. Actually, no, I'm going to put her in meh just because she is the traitor and I find that to be so disappointing. I wish they'd done more with their characters. They just didn't do anything with some characters in the show. Setsuno, probably the most mediocre of the garbage trio. And before you complain, that is actually their name. Hojo, I think his name is Setsuno, and Tabe. They are literally called the garbage trio, which I find to be such a funny name for someone you're trying to sort of make look cooler. Sukauchi. Given more screen time and whenever they adapt this newest season of the manga to the anime, which I hear he actually has a part in, then I'll be sure to check him out. But right now it's just nah. I can't really say much on you. I don't know what it is about Asui's design that just bugs me. I think it might be those big beady eyes. Ooh, creepy. But like, not a bad character. I just find that she's typically very underwhelming, and I don't like the design. The design of her character is bugging me. The whole frog aesthetic, it ain't working for me. Sorry. The funny thing is that the only two characters, like the three, the four female characters I have at the bottom of this tier list, I have never made a series with whatsoever. Actually, wait, no, I have made Asui technically a ship for Deku in a brief episode of MHA What If Season 2, and technically Season 1. But other than that, I have not made the ships of any of these lately. Twice, he's solid. I like his whole schizophrenic kind of call out about mental illness and stuff. It's pretty cool. Next up on the list, we have Vlad King. Now, Vlad King is weird because, like, at times it seems like he cares for all the students, but then at other times he shows that he has a bias towards 1B, which I find to be something really unique about him to Aizawa, because Aizawa just doesn't like anyone. He will just abuse you all the same. But Vlad will verbally abuse all of 1A very easily, but then is very only really harsh on 1B when they lose. When they win, he's super like he's like a fangirl for them. Hojo Hojo's alright. Cooler if it wasn't for Tabe existing, and Tabe is a cool idea. Why is there a second Bakugo? Having a bit of lag. Alright, next up, Yuga Aoyama. And anyone who's seen a spoiler for the latest segment of the manga knows why I am putting him up here. I'm not going to say why he's up here because this one is very spoiler heavy, and I'm not going to do that to you. And last on this list, we have Hitoshi Shinso. Now, Shinso has had some interesting battle effects. Like, he's been on two different teams of 1A and 1B, and he won with both teams he was on. Oh, wait, no, he didn't. He won with the 1A team, but he lost with the 1B. But I don't blame that much on him as much as it was just the other ones sucking besides him and Monoma. But other than that, his whole presence has kind of been like sort of like a similar Aizawa almost. Like he's the next generation of Aizawa, which I find to be pretty cool. Now, I know there's a few characters that this list is definitely missing, so I am not gonna I don't really have. I'm not gonna make a Twitter account so that I can put the images in. What I will do is tell you that there's only a few main characters that I really think that need to be mentioned, which I've mentioned most of them already. But if it wasn't for the fact that this list is kind of limited, Kendo would be here, and I'd probably put the rest of the 1B class sort of varying between good and meh, because most of them are cool. The only one that I'd say would have a different effect on me is Koroiro would go in God, and Kinoko would go in I Hate You, because I find her annoying as hell. And also Shota. Shota's annoying. But yeah, that is my opinion on every MHA character that was on this list. I apologize whenever I did this list. I failed to notice that there wasn't as many 1Bs as I thought there was. But alas, you gotta live with your mistakes. I hope you enjoyed this video because I am sure gonna enjoy reading what comments you guys leave about my opinions because this is YouTube and it is gonna be interesting to see. Also, I'm going to make a quick announcement. I am going to be writing another video today. It's going to be released late my time because I am running on German time. So I will catch you all in the next video. Bye.